BOP transfer Leonard to the FCI Sandstone, Minnesota facility or the FCI Oxford, Wisconsin facility. Leonard is supposed to be within 500 miles of his family. He never has been any closer than 1,100, 1,200 miles. After the beating Leonard took at Canaan, it's become very, very evident that the BOP cannot protect Leonard in a max security prison. We need him transferred for his safety, for health reasons, so he can get proper medical care at the facilities out there. We're going to direct to the Attorney General. We've got to do this. We've got to get him transferred. That's our number one priority. Get him transferred out of Lewisburg to the Sandstone, Minnesota facility, their Oxford, Wisconsin facility. Call the Attorney General at 202-353-1555 and ask that be done. And you can email the Attorney General at askdoj@usdoj.gov. That's very important that we get that done. Another thing that we asked you to do at this time is remember that the congressional recess starts April 4th to the 19th, and all the congressmen will be home in their home districts. This is a fine time for you to approach your congressman at his home district in your area. Possibly he'd be having a town meeting in your town. A lot of them do that. Or he'll be at his local office in your town. Make contact with them and speak to them on Leonard's behalf. What we ask you to do is remind the congressperson that Leonard's been in prison for 33 years. The government has conceded, Crooks has conceded, that they do not actually know who killed the two agents, and the government is still fighting to keep FOIA papers from being released. You know, that's how the firing pin test on the cartridge that has been such a big discussion point came up, was when FOIA papers were released years after the trial. But ask them to intercede for Leonard, ask them to intercede with the President and with the Bureau of Prisons to get Leonard transferred. Remind them that Leonard was brutally attacked in January, and he's a 64-year-old man, and he was attacked, and he cannot be protected in a max security prison. Ask for Leonard to be transferred, and ask for your congressperson to approach the President about executive clemency for Leonard. Now, these congressmen are going to be there. That's why they take this recess, is so they can come home to their home districts and visit with you. You are the people. We are the people. They serve us. Don't let them get to your home district and have them leave after that recess and you not have at least called them and spoken to them on the phone. They're there and they're available. In D.C., they're hard to get. We're in their home district. They're pretty easy to get a hold of. So make a point to visit with them and speak up for Leonard. These people can have influence in Washington that we can't. If you can put a bug in their ear, and if several people in your district can put bugs in their ear, they go back to Washington with something they can pass on to the President, on to the different committees up there, and on to the Justice Department. So contact your local congressman, and you can find out how to do that on the Internet, and to see how to contact your congressman to speak up for Leonard. It's very important that that be done. You know, it's become very evident since our telephone campaign to the White House began that the FBI Agents Association is now kicked in making phone calls to the White House also. They have a 10,000-strong member association. Their association basically stopped Bill Clinton from pardoning Leonard by threats of a strike, by taking out full-page articles, and by picketing. We need to power up and counteract these people. We know they're calling the White House just as we are now. We need to keep our calls going in constantly. Every day we need to be calling now. And don't call once a day. It costs you $1.50. Call 2 or 3 times a day. On Friday, call 5 or 6 times. That's the day we try to knock the phones down up there. But we ask you to call the White House at 202-456-1111 or 202-456-1112. And what we want you to ask when you call is tell the person that you're asking the president to issue executive clemency to Leonard Peltier. He has the authority under Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution to issue clemency. After Bush declined Leonard's petition for clemency, the standard procedure is you have to go through the Justice Department again, and you have to wait for a year. But we can go direct to the president. The exercise of Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution does not require a request through the JOD. So call that number, 202-456-1111 or 202-456-1112, and ask the president give executive clemency to Leonard Peltier. Executive clemency, it has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. Clemency has to do with mercy. Leonard's been in prison for 33 years, 33 unjustified years. We're asking for mercy for our brother. We're not asking for any judgment of guilt or innocence when we ask for clemency. We're asking for mercy for a man who has served 33 years of his life. And you and I know he has served 33 years of his life for a crime he did not commit. So please make that call for us and for Leonard. 202-456-1111. That number is busy. 202-456-1112. Make those calls. It just takes a few moments. The longest I've been on hold has been, I think, 12 minutes, and I've gotten through sometimes as fast as 3 minutes. So make that call for us. Make that call. Make that call for Leonard. He'd do it for you. I promise you, he would do it for you. If he were out here and you were in there, he would do it for you. But you got to call for him. He can't call for himself, my friends. He can't do it. We got to do it for him. We got to do it for him. And I thank all of you who are doing it, because I know there's thousands out there actually doing it. And you have no idea how big that is. And thanks from all of us that are working for Leonard to get him out, get him home. I want to read you a piece of Leonard's right now before I go further into the program. But before I do that, I want to tell you, if anybody's out there is listening and wants to talk, all you have to do is hit the *1, and that will unmute you, and you can come in and visit with us. If you have questions or something to add, please do. It would be much appreciated. This is a piece of Leonard's called I Have No Apologies, Only Sorrow. I have no apologies, only sorrow. I can't apologize for what I haven't done, but I can grieve, and I do. Every day, every hour, I grieve for those who died at that Oglala firefight in 1975, and for their families, for the families of the FBI agents, Jack Collar and Ronald Williams, and yes, for the family of Joe Kilwright Stuntz, a 21-year-old brave-hearted Indian whose death from a bullet at Oglala that same day, like the death of the hundreds of other Indians at Pine Ridge at that terrible time, has never been investigated. My heart aches in remembering the suffering and fear under which so many of my people were forced to live at that time, the very suffering and fear that brought me and the others to Oglala that day to defend the defenseless. I am filled with aching sorrow, too, for the loss of my own family, because in a very real way, I also died that day. I died to my family, to my children, to my grandchildren, to myself. I lived out my own death for over a quarter of a century now. who put me here and keep me here, knowing of my innocence, can take grim satisfaction in their sure reward, which is being who and what they are. That's as terrible a reward as any I could imagine. I know who and what I am. I am an Indian who dared to stand up to defend his people. I'm an innocent man who never murdered anyone nor ever wanted to. And yes, I am a sundancer. That too is my identity. If I am to suffer as a symbol of my people, then I suffer proudly. I will never yield. Leonard Peltier. You know, Leonard was offered an opportunity a few months back to sign a statement of remorse for the death of him killing 2 agents. And he was offered it in the vein of it would make his parole possibly easier to come by. Leonard's been in prison 33 years, my friends. 33 years. If you've ever heard those iron doors slam behind you, 33 days is hard to think about. 33 months is a damn long time, and 33 years is a lifetime. He was offered to sign this piece of paper and possibly get himself out on parole easier. He couldn't sign it. Like he said, he can't apologize for something he didn't do. After 33 years, this man, even when he was offered a way that could possibly get him out, said, no, I am not going to sign a piece of paper saying I regret doing something that I didn't do. That's one thing you find about Leonard Peltier and all of this, and all of these things he's been through and the trials. Leonard has never lied. Another thing you know, and you will find out more and more as time goes by, the government, the FBI, has lied time after time after time. Leonard Peltier has shown honor in the trials and tribulations he has had to deal with because he chose to defend his people that day, a jumping bull. But he has spoken with truth. He can stand before the Creator with clean hands and straight eyes. These FBI people lie time and time again. You know, it is one thing to lie to somebody about, I didn't drink that cup of coffee or something. But the FBI has lied about terrible things that have put a man in jail for all these years. They have perjured themselves. They have stood up in a federal court with their stinking silver federal badges in front of a crooked-ass federal judge in a rigged federal scam trial and lied time after time after time. Mr. Jack Hodge. Mr. Jack Hodge is this ballistics expert that testified in court that he could not get a good firing pin test off of this .223 bullet casing found in the trunk of one of the agent's cars. He testified because he couldn't get a good firing pin test that he did an extractor test. 6 months after he got the casing, he did an extractor test. That's his testimony. Extractor tests are not conclusive. Very many extractors leave nearly the same marks. But this extractor test on this .223 casing is what the main piece of evidence the FBI used, the government used against Leonard. It was admitted into evidence by a mistake by the defense attorney, actually, because it had signatures on it that were not valid and could not be matched to people's handwriting. but nonetheless it was admitted into evidence, and once the defense attorney admitted it, it could not be taken out. The bad thing about this is that Agent Hodge stood there and testified. This Federal Bureau of Investigation officer testified that he could not do a firing pin test on the round. Later, years later, many years later, documents that came from the Freedom of Information Act showed that an October 75 ballistics test done on the firing pin showed that it was negative, that the weapon they attributed to Leonard did not fire the cartridge they had. That was done in October of 75. Hodge based his testimony in court on a test performed in February of 1976. 6 months later, he lied. And when he was asked about it later, he simply said he misspoke. Well, that's perjury. That's a federal agent committing perjury, getting by with it. And this never would have even been discovered if the lawyers hadn't have found it through release of FOI documents. The FOI documents, according to Mike Kuzma now, number close to, Mike said 2 weeks ago on the radio that the FOI documents that he is aware of now, listen to this. At the trial, the defense was given 3,500 pages of documents, of evidence documents the FBI had. As to date, right now, the government will not release, listen to this number, friends, 142,579 pages of material. 142,579 pages of material the government will not release. They say it's because it has to do with national security. Now let me tell you, friends, something that happened over 35 years ago on a reservation in South Dakota. And there's 142,000 plus pages of documents they won't release pertaining to national security. If you buy that, you'll buy any other kind of garbage they feed you. That's garbage. What they're holding back there, according to Mike, is the sub-N files, which contain a lot of information about informants, paid informants, infiltrators into AIM, and possibly into the defense team itself. You know, I was stunned talking to Mike 3 or 4 weeks ago when he told me this piece of information that I did not realize. But the lawyer who ended up being Leonard's lead attorney in his trial, Mr. Takeoff, listen, had never tried a murder case in his life. Never tried a murder case in his life. I wonder anywhere in those 142,579 pages there is a reason why having Bill Kunstler and Takeoff ended up being the lead attorney. Makes you wonder how a man who had never tried a murder trial in his life got assigned to be Leonard's lead attorney. But back to this shell casing. Anybody who's familiar with firearms, and a lot of these things people just have to sit back and, a lot of things people have accepted. But what you have to do, you have to sit back, you have to really look at it, read it out loud, and say, does that make sense? Anybody familiar with firearms knows an M16, which is AR-15, is the M16 civilian version. It ejects its cartridges high and to the right every time. Every time. it ejects high and to the right. A cartridge fired in the manner that they say these execution shots were fired would have ejected over the hood of the car or to the front of the car, not into the trunk. That's a fact of how this weapon works. For that cartridge to have ejected into the trunk of that vehicle, someone would have to be standing about 10 feet away from the rear bumper of the vehicle to fire that shot, and it eject into the trunk of the vehicle. According to them, the shots were fired point-blank range near the side doors of the vehicle. No matter how you position that weapon and pull that trigger in that location, the cartridge is going to eject. If the weapon is pointed down, the cartridge is going to eject to the right and up, which would go over the hood of the vehicle or around the front of the vehicle. It would not go into the trunk. There's no way. And you stop and think about that. This is how that weapon works. Nobody has brought this up. Nobody has stopped to think, how does an M16 eject? Always high and to the right. 10, 12 feet from where it comes out, it lands high and to the right, off to the right somewhere. For that cartridge to end up in the trunk, the shooter would have had to have been 10 feet to the left-hand side of the driver's side and to the rear of the vehicle for that shell, that cartridge, to eject into that trunk. Which brings us to another point. That car was gone over by an FBI evidence team. An FBI evidence team that could find an eyelash in the trunk of that vehicle. They're good at collecting evidence. They could have found an eyelash laying in the trunk of that vehicle. 3 days later, friends, a fingerprint man finds this cartridge in the trunk. 3 days later, a fingerprint man. This cartridge, as big as your little finger, gold and shiny, laying in the trunk of this vehicle that a crack FBI evidence team has been over, and a fingerprint man finds it 3 days later? You know, somewhere in these held documents, we're going to find that the people who collected the cartridges fired up around the house, the green house, those agents' names, every time an agent collects evidence or looks at evidence, they have to sign. And every time anybody looked at that car, because it was a piece of evidence, they had to log in and log out. Somewhere in these 142,000 pages of concealed paper, there will be paperwork that will show whoever collected the cartridges from around the house within that 3-day period had access to the vehicle also and placed that cartridge in the vehicle. The AR-15 always ejects high and to the right. For the round to have gone into the trunk, for the cartridge to go in the trunk after ejection, after it was fired, the shooter would have to be standing minimum 10 feet away from the car, away from the rear bumper. That does not fit in any way their theory of an execution shooting right next to the car. If it had occurred like that, the ejection would have went over the front of the hood or out in front of the car. If they were facing the other direction, the cartridge would have ejected 10 to 12 feet away from the car. That cartridge was picked up at the house by an agent. In that 3-day period, they had sequestered 2 14, 15-year-old boys and coerced them and bullied them into saying that Leonard had the only 223 AR-15 there, and once they got that statement from two scared kids, then they took AR-15 round that they found at the house, put it in the trunk, and then let their FBI fingerprint guy find it. Somewhere in those pages of concealed documents, you're going to find that, my friends. It's there. Count on it. The AR-15 ejects high and to the right. No way that could have ended up in the trunk. No way. And if it was in the trunk, no way would an FBI evidence team that can find an eyelash in a car floorboard miss a cartridge as big as my little finger. That's placed evidence. That's placed evidence. So what we need to remember all this time when we're dealing with Leonard, we're not dealing with a man who's had a fair trial and a fair round with the justice system. We're dealing with a man who has become and who was intentionally made a political prisoner. We can't forget that. He is a political prisoner. Manufactured evidence, manufactured testimony, coerced testimony, perjured testimony has put Leonard in jail. And perjured statements since by the FBI and by Ed Woods and Joe Trimbach have tried to keep him there. You know, Joe Trimbach himself is one of Leonard's biggest detractors. Joe Trimbach has perjured himself. Time after time after time, Joe Trimbach has perjured himself. You know, Trimbach, just give you a few examples. Trimbach knew about FBI informant John Stewart. This is more FBI paid informants. John Stewart, and Trimbach knows this. He knows this. John Stewart drove Peltier, drove Leonard, and a group of people to Rosebud on July 2nd. During that drive, Stewart told Trimbach Peltier told all the people in the car, all who were present at the shootout, that his gun had jammed during the firefight. Everybody who was in that car was at the firefight, and everyone who was in that car agreed. The weapon Leonard was using jammed during the firefight. Trimbach knows this. He knows it. It was told to him by an informant. At the Cedar Rapids trial of Dino Butler and Bob Robidoux, Trimbach denied knowing that Banks or the AIM group were on the Jumping Bull land. Another lie. Trimbach, during the Wounded Knee trial of Dennis Banks and Russell Means, denied that he'd applied to a court for wiretaps on the Wounded Knee telephone, despite the presence of his signature on the application. This is this ex-FBI guy, this Joe Trimbach, the AIM buster. Well, Joe Trimbach is a perjurer. Now, he happens to be a former FBI agent who is a perjurer and who committed perjury while he was an FBI agent, who stood in a federal courtroom with his shiny silver federal badge in front of a federal judge in a federal trial in a federal courthouse in front of a federal jury and lied. This is who the FBI is, my friends. You have to understand, we're dealing with a political prisoner. When political prisoners are taken, lies don't count. What we have to do is make the lies count. What we have to do is make them stand up and count their lies to them and shove their lies down their throat And we challenged them. Joe Trimbach, Ed Wood, you're so hot and sure that you know the facts. Well, you know what, buds? We know you know the facts too. And we know you know you're lying. We challenge you to face us any day. Any day. We want to face you on television cameras. You bring your lies, you bring your quotes, and we will take your quotes and we will dismantle them with the truth. It's going to be hard for anybody to believe anything that comes out of Joe Trimbach's mouth when they understand that he's a liar. You know, a surprise witness at that same AIM trial of Dennis Banks and Russell was former AIM member Louis Movescamps. Prosecutor Heard himself reviewed affidavits produced by the FBI. After meeting Movescamps, he apparently had some doubt as to the witness's honesty, so much that he requested that a lie detector test be administered. Trimbach didn't want to administer a lie detector test to his prime rat. Also, during the same trial, Trimbach testified that the FBI had no informers infiltrating the defense team. This lie was shown when Douglas Durham's infiltration of AIM became known. A couple months later, during the trial of Leonard Crowdog, Trimbach testified he had no idea that Durham had been an informer, although one of the three agents in his own Minneapolis office who followed him to the stand acknowledged that Durham had contacted him at a special phone number at least 30 times during the Banks Means trial. This agent said that Durham had been known to Trimbach from the start and that he had notified Heard and the other U.S. attorneys about Durham. What everybody needs to understand, what everyone needs to understand, that Joe Trimbach is a perjurer. He's a liar. And why is Trimbach lying so vehemently to keep Leonard locked up? Well, I'll tell you why. It's real simple. Joe Trimbach was responsible for the death of 3 people at the Jumping Bull Ranch, July 26, 1975. That's why he's making such noise to keep Leonard locked up and to keep evidence suppressed. Joe Trimbach is responsible for the death of Joe Stuntz and for the death of the 2 FBI agents. That's why he's trying to keep Leonard locked up. That's why he is pushing as hard as he can push to make sure records aren't released. They're being withheld. Joe Trimbach realizes he stands culpable for the death of 3 people. Now, the more noise he can make about Leonard, the more smoke he can throw in the air about Leonard, the less attention gets paid to his own guilt and his own culpability. We're going to blow away the smoke, Trimbach. We're going to shine a light on your culpability. We're going to shine a light on who is responsible for the death that day at Jumping Bull Ranch. You know, that day, federal agents were the aggressor in a deadly attack on the residents at the Jumping Bull Ranch. That's a fact. It's not conjecture. That's fact that is borne by the verdict of not guilty by reason of self-defense handed down to 2 people who were tried for the same deaths of 2 agents that day. A jury that was allowed to hear all the evidence available understood the law, which states one who is not an aggressor and an encounter is justified in using against his adversary when he is reasonably believes that he is in immediate danger or his family or other persons are of a deadly attack. It is reasonable to use deadly force against a deadly attack. The jury heard the evidence, all the evidence of what happened that day in Bob and Dino's trial. And they found Bob and Dino not guilty by reason of self-defense. Those agents were sent in there. They were sent in there as sacrifices, Trimbach sacrifices. His goal that day was to get the agents in there, have a shootout start, and bring all his troopers in and wipe out AIM. That was his goal. It failed. It failed. And he lost, the government lost 2 agents, and we lost Joe Stunts. He's responsible for this. Joe Trimbach is the man responsible. That's why he is making such a smokescreen over Leonard. We challenge him and Ed Wood to come and speak on camera about this. And if they can't come speak on camera and face a bunch of raggedy-assed Indians with the truth, then we know that they're hiding. We already know that. We want the rest of the nation to know that. We don't think for one moment they will come and have a debate with us. Because time after time, we can show they're lying. Time after time. Time after time. It doesn't take a whole lot to understand how an M16 AR-15 works. It ejects high and to the right. It doesn't take a whole lot to understand that the first test done on the cartridge, comparing the gun they assigned as being Leonard's, showed no match. The second test was done 6 months later, so it could have a sort of match. And it doesn't take a genius to understand that an FBI evidence team cannot miss, in a murder scene, a cartridge as big as my little finger, bright and shiny gold, in a trunk of a car. It doesn't take a genius to put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4. That cartridge was gathered at the house, and in the 3-day period between the shootout and the cartridge being discovered, an agent placed that cartridge in the trunk for the fingerprint agent to find. These things are just as clear and as plain and have never been talked about because people have tried to defend Leonard. Leonard's innocent. Leonard's innocent. What we need to do and what we're trying to do is go after the people who cause these deaths. Go after the people who literally cause these deaths, the FBI. We need an investigation of their reign of terror. There is no doubt it was going on. You know, the COINTELPRO operation that was still going on, even though it was ordered to be ended by the Church Committee in '70. The mindset was still there. These agents were still using COINTELPRO tactics to divide, to infiltrate, to set one against another. The reign of terror happened. Dick Wilson was after an eighth of the reservation. He was trying to run traditional people off. Dozens and dozens and dozens were murdered. Over 300 were brutally attacked.
And hold on.
People ask me, why would he do that?
Wanbli, I just wanted to, you got a bunch of listeners on the World Wide Web and on the conference line. I just want to make an offer. If anybody has a comment or a question for Wanbli, right here, every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Free Leonard Peltier, this is the time to ask, okay? We can go for a few extra minutes if we need to, but we're trying to reach out to the population. Maybe you've heard the story for the first time. It's possible, but you haven't heard it. You heard it 30 years ago, and you say, wait a minute, wasn't this a long time ago? Yeah, and it's still, there's a man still in prison today because of that. So feel free to join Wanbli. Love to hear from you. He gives it all. And And I'm gonna when I start playing that music, Wanbli, the background music, you usually got 4 minutes, to talk over that soft background music. That you don't have to just get right off there. I just want you to know I usually do that for you.
Okay, I'll be listening.
Okay, good enough.
If you want to dial in and speak up, friends, hit *1 and visit with me. If you got a question or something you want to add, Gary, you out there? I want to speak just a little bit about the fairness of the trials that happened in this case. 2 trials happened in this case: the Butler-Robidoux trial and the Peltier trial. Dino and Bob were found, as I said, innocent by reason of self-defense. In that verdict, the jury proclaimed the FBI to be an aggressor using deadly force, and that Dino and Bob had justified reasons to shoot back. They were found innocent by reason of self-defense. That's a fact. Bob's been called a murderer by Joe Trimbach and Ed Woods. What they forget is that Bob was found innocent. Bob was attacked by an aggressor, by an aggressive force, invading private property. You cannot call a man a murderer who was defending people. He was found innocent by self-defense. Don't forget that, Woods. Don't forget that, Trimbach. You can't tell lies. You can't make a murderer out of somebody who was found innocent. You lie. Just a few notes here on the differences in the trials. In the Butler-Robidoux trial, there were very few autopsy photos allowed to be seen by the jury. Autopsy photos are terrible, terrible, upsetting things. They have the ability to sway a jury. All autopsy photos were entered into evidence in Leonard's trial. All autopsy photos. In the Butler-Robidoux trial, Agent Gary Adams testified to the presence and departure of a red pickup truck at 12:18, moments after the agents were shot. In the Peltier trial, FBI Agent Adams denied the existence of the 12:18 truck. Here's another agent in one trial testified about this red pickup truck, and the other denied it existed. Now, this agent, Gary Adams, he perjured himself. In one of these trials, which one was it? It's amazing. In the Butler-Robidoux trial, many FBI 302s, that's the agent's notes that they take, were allowed to be entered into evidence. In the Peltier trial, none were allowed to be entered.
And it looks like we have
the Butler-Robidoux trial. Go ahead.
Looks like we have a caller. State your first name. Where are you calling from?
Hi, yes. My name is Nicole, and I'm calling from North Carolina.
Hi, Nicole.
And, hi, thank you for letting me speak. I am 22 years old, and I just heard about this story. And I've been doing a lot of reading up on it as much as I could, all the websites for this man, and it aggravates me. It makes me so upset. And I feel sometimes hopeless because where are our rights? And so my question is, I'm only 22, and I'm in North Carolina. I'm from New York City, so I go back and forth. What can I do as a young person to help educate people about this locally, where I am, and what can I do physically about this situation as far as helping and everything like that?
Before you answer, Wanbli, I just want to say, tell people about our radio network, because that's the ground floor for educating, Nicole. So thank you, Wanbli.
Okay.
That's correct. Nicole, have you gone to the LPDO website, whoisleonardpeltier.info?
I believe I have. I've been to so many of them. I can't remember every one that I've been to, but I'm sure I have ran into some of those websites, yeah.
Well, if you will go to it, whoisleonardpeltier.info. That is the official Leonard Peltier Defense Offense Committee website. The LPDOC is run by Leonard's sister, Carrie Ann Peltier, and his niece, Carrie Ann Cowan. If you go to our website, there are links on there that you can print up brochures and flyers off your own printer. You can pass them out. They're easy to print, easy to pass out. You can talk to your friends, and this is something we need people to do. Talk to your friends in your age range, and tell them, ask them, do you know about this man? Have you heard this happen? Because this happened 15 years before you were born.
Right.
Still going on.
I actually found out about this on MySpace because I have a lot of Native American friends that I'm networking with. And so MySpace has its benefits.
I'm on MySpace also.
Okay.
And I have my Peltier Texas support group is on there, and my own personal page is on there. My page is Wichita.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna find you. I think I know where you are.
Okay, but you can go to the web page and get that information downloaded to pass out to your friends. Also, if you would like to kick in and form a support group in your area, that's easy enough to do. We'll give you all the information you need, all the support you can get, help you educate people in your area out there. And that's easy to do. You go to, again, whoisleonardpeltier.info. At the very top of the page, it will be a heading says support groups, and you click that. It'll take you to another page, and it'll click you can click on application. And you can actually send the application to me by email if you want to. On the front page of our show on therealpublicradio.net, where it shows our show listing there, if you'll click my name, you'll click Wanbli, that'll take you direct to my email, and you can email me the application. If you want, you can email me anyway, and I can email an application back to you. And we can get you set up. We can get you set up with the rest of the network, where you can network with the rest of us, get your friends involved out there. What you can do locally, you can go to your local churches, your local civic groups. I'm sure you have a group of friends that have mutual interest. Ask them, would they stand up? Would they stand up in this situation where a man is being held political prisoner by this country? And that's exactly what it is. And we would appreciate your help so very much and give you all the support you would need in getting in operation in your area. So if you want to do that, please do that.
Well, I actually found you on MySpace. You happen to be on my top, surprisingly. Yeah, so I found you, and I'm going to definitely plug into that, and I appreciate it. And this is just so outrageous, and it burdens me. I've not been able to not think about it since I first heard of it, and I found that I had Native American on my father's side, so this is definitely very outrageous, very unjustly, and I'm going to do everything I can, and I appreciate the information that you guys are passing along. Thank you so much.
Well, you contact me there on MySpace also, and we'll help you every step of the way. And, that's what we need. One of the things we need so desperately right now is the younger people's involvement.
Right.
Because young people have lots of energy, and they can spread the word. A lot of us older people are familiar with this, but we need younger people's involvement.
Yeah, we forgot about it and then found out about it again, Wanbli. It was been so long, right?
Yeah.
A lot. I was just coming out of high school about when all that stuff started happening. Then I got on with my life. I remember hearing about it. Then here I never guessed one day I'd be right in in the middle of being active in this arena, and then here, looking back, I'm thinking, geez, that was a long time ago. I was a kid back then, younger than Nicole when it all happened. But Nicole, also with your, connection, I don't know what you're all doing. You say you're networking with a lot of young people your age and stuff, but I've been wanting to do a radio program, to produce one with young people on it. So if you all decide you want to, make it an extension of what you want to do to help Leonard, and then talk about other issues at the same time, give me a call. Okay, hit me up on the contact page. I'd be glad to do that for you all.
I will definitely do that, and I'm gonna go ahead and run because I'm really excited about getting this out, and I'm just thank you guys for letting me talk and everything like that. But I'll keep in contact, and I'm gonna remind you guys who I am and send emails, and I just thank you guys so much.
Great, good talking to you.
Well, thank you so much. Spread the word for us.
Thank you. Bye. God bless.
Okay, Wanbli, you got a few minutes here to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, we want really and truly to ask people to get back on the telephones, call the president, let the president know We want Leonard given executive clemency. That is so very important. He can do that without an act of Congress. Act of Congress gave him the right to do that. It's called Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States. The President can issue clemency under that article without any kind of application being filed. So call the White House at 202-456-1111, 202-456-1112. Ask the President for executive clemency for America's #1 political prisoner. And never forget, my friends, he is a political prisoner. He is not a criminal. He is a political prisoner. Ask for clemency for our brother, defender of his people, Leonard Peltier, 202-456-1111 or 1112. I think that'll do all I have to say this evening, except if you can, send $10 to LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106. That's the LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106. And Ed Woods, Joe Trimbach, come on, face us. Get the topless to face us. We know you can't.
And when's your next program time?
God bless you all, my friends. Folks, Desert. You what?
Yeah, your next program time. You didn't tell people about that.
Oh, next program. Okay, going to be on the air Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, Mohawk-Radio. That's Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, Mohawk-Radio.com. .com, yeah. Catch us there, .com. Catch us there, Mohawk-Radio.com, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Thanks a bunch, Desert. We'll talk to you next Sunday. Free Leonard Peltier.
Amen, brother. We'll do it. And that's Wanbli, ladies and gentlemen, right here every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Free Leonard Peltier. We are all doing time with the wisdom of the Native Americans, setting the record straight because somebody's got to do it. And Leonard's fortunate to have so many great friends and families supporting him when there's so many people in prison who don't have anybody there for them, ladies and gentlemen. Literally, do not have anyone. Imagine being in prison for 20 years. You might lose touch with your family over an extended period of time, right? Well, it just shows that these traditional Native peoples are some of the toughest hombres out there. You know, they really are. They're tight because they're in a struggle unlike any other right on our continent. Well, there's a lot we can learn from them. Let's close out with a song for Leonard, and thanks for tuning in.